Austin Root is here for you, your favorite Australia guy. In most Australian public schools, kids wear full uniforms, blazer, polo, the works, but nobody recites the Pledge of Allegiance. In most American public schools, it's the exact opposite. No uniform required, but standing for the flag every morning is standard. That one flip tells you almost everything about the philosophical gap between these two systems. I've gone through 11 of the biggest differences between American and Australian schools, and some of them are just logistical, like what time school starts or how many breaks you get. But some of them reflect something deeper. Two countries that have genuinely different ideas about what school is actually supposed to do to a young person. Let's get into it. But wait, before we begin, please subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my essential stuff. Comment "I subscribe" below and I will personally welcome you to our community. With that said, let's get started. Start with the obvious one. Walk into almost any Australian public school and the kids are in uniform. Collared polo, school-colored shorts or skirt, often a hat if they're primary age. Private schools step it up further, blazers, ties, crests on the pocket. Only about 19% of American public schools use uniforms, OL garments, mostly in urban areas where they were introduced in the 80s and 90s as a response to gang violence, not as a cultural tradition. For most American kids, school means showing up in whatever you wore yesterday. In Australia, the uniform is almost universal. The idea behind it is explicitly social, reducing visible differences between students and building a sense of belonging within the school. Whether that actually works is a debate for another day, but the cultural default is telling. Australia defaults to equity through conformity. America defaults to individual expression and then argues about the fallout. That difference alone will hit an American kid on day one. Here's the one that genuinely surprises Americans. In American schools, at the start of the first period every day, the whole school turns to the flag. One is mounted in every classroom and recites the Pledge of Allegiance, dead silent for a minute after. The whole school, same time, every day. In Australia, nothing like that exists. The Australian national flag may or may not even be displayed at a school. Injecting nationalist ideology into students is considered not just unnecessary, but actually inappropriate. It's frowned upon. This isn't an accident. It reflects a fundamentally different relationship between Australians and patriotism. Australians tend to express national identity through sport, humor, and culture, not ceremony. The idea of a mandatory daily oath of loyalty to the state would feel deeply strange in most Australian school contexts. For American kids moving over, this lands as a genuine culture shock. The absence of it reads as almost radical. Australia runs on 4 terms with short breaks in between. America runs on 2 semesters separated by 1 very long summer. The Australian academic year runs about 200 days. The American year runs about 175. Australia breaks these into 4 terms with roughly 2-week breaks between each, plus a 3-week Christmas break. Americans get a summer break of 2 to 3 months with little else. On paper, Australian kids go to school more. In practice, the Australian calendar feels more sustainable. Families can take actual holidays in the off weeks without pulling kids out of class, and the shorter gaps mean less of that "we spent August reteaching everything from June" problem. One Australian student described it this way: the term breaks were short enough that parents could actually take time off work and be with their kids, unlike American summers, which are so long, they become a childcare problem. It's a structural difference that changes family life as much as student life. This one is actively shifting. American high schoolers are still expected to handle 3 to 4 hours of homework after class. Australia is moving in the opposite direction. Schools are experimentally dropping homework requirements or reducing them significantly. Australian parents are increasingly skeptical of homework. So are teachers. This isn't yet universal across Australia. There's real debate about it, but the direction of travel is clear. The cultural attitude toward homework as a measure of rigor is weaker in Australia than in the US. For an American family used to nightly homework as a fixed part of the school day, this is disorienting. For the kids, usually not a complaint. This one matters enormously if you're moving around. Australia has a national curriculum, one unified framework that covers English, mathematics, science, and humanities across all states and territories. The US does not. Each American state sets its own curriculum standards, which means what an 11th grader in Oregon is studying may have nothing to do with what a student in Pennsylvania is learning at the same time. An attempt called Common Core tried to create some national consistency in the US, but states adopted it voluntarily and many didn't. This makes transferring schools across state lines genuinely complicated, and getting into out-of-state university. In Australia, moving from Sydney to Melbourne changes the commute, not the curriculum. For migrant families and expats who may move again in a few years, this is one of the most practically significant differences on this list. The two systems have completely different end-of-school logic. In Australia, students sit NAPLAN at years 3, 5, 7, and 9, a national literacy and numeracy check. Then, in year 12, their performance generates an ATAR score, the Australian Tertiary Admission Rank, which places them nationally and determines university entry. In the US, university admission leans heavily on SAT or ACT scores, plus state-mandated tests that vary by location. Many high schools offer advanced placement courses to signal university readiness. The ATAR is one national number. The American system is a patchwork of scores, grades, extracurriculars, essays, and teacher recommendations, complex by design because US universities are assessing a whole profile, not just a rank. Neither approach is objectively better, but they reflect different values. Australia says, here's where you rank nationally. America says, here's the full picture of who you are. This is where the culture shock hits Americans the hardest. High school sport in America is a serious operation. Tryouts are competitive, cuts happen, football games are community events. The culture of the athlete at school, celebrity cheerleaders, pep rallies, booster clubs, full stadiums on Friday nights is deeply embedded in American school identity. In Australia, schools operate a no-cut sports policy. Students compete against rival teams matched to their own skill level, not the best available. Parents don't expect their kids to compete against the elite. There's no Friday Night Lights culture in Australian schools. Sports are part of a balanced school experience, not a parallel entertainment industry. An American teen who was a varsity athlete and part of that social ecosystem will find Australian school sport a significant adjustment, more inclusive, less dramatic. American students often start school at 7 a.m., requiring a 6 a.m. wake up to make the 6:30 bus. Australian high schools typically start at 8:30. Sleep science has been making the case for later start times in high schools for years. Adolescent sleep cycles naturally shift later, meaning a 7 a.m. start is biologically working against teenagers. Australia's 8:30 start is closer to what pediatric research actually recommends. For families arriving from the US, this is one of those differences that sounds small and immediately improves quality of life. Two very specific things American students miss immediately. American schools have hallway lockers and cafeteria-style lunch queue. Pick your food, sit at long tables. In Australia, students typically carry their bags all day. Lunch is bought from a canteen or brought from home. There are no pep rally montages built around a canteen window. The school lunch experience in Australia is more practical, less cinematic. But the no locker thing is a genuine logistical adjustment for students who are used to offloading books between classes. Small? Yes, but the little daily frictions are sometimes the ones that stick. Australian classrooms tend to run more informally than American ones. In American schools, the teacher-student relationship carries a certain formality. You address teachers by title, the hierarchy is clear. In many Australian schools, especially at the secondary level, first names aren't unusual. Casual banter with teachers is part of the culture. The Aussie instinct to cut through ceremony extends into the classroom. American students often read this as the teacher not being serious. Australian students read American school formality as slightly stiff. Neither is wrong. They're operating from different default assumptions about authority. This is the deepest one. The US system is, structurally, built toward a single goal: college admission. AP courses, extracurriculars, SAT prep, personal essays, the whole apparatus is designed to produce a competitive college application. The four-year university is the obvious and expected destination. Australia takes a broader view. Vocational training through TAFE, the technical and further education system, is a legitimate, respected pathway, not a consolation prize. College basics trades are treated as real careers, not fallback options. The ATAR matters for university entry, but it's not the only story a school tells about success. Australian education is described as a mind, body, and spirit focus, educating students across nearly all aspects of life, rather than funneling them toward a single competitive outcome. Whether that framing holds up in practice depends on the school and the student, but the philosophical starting point is different, and it filters down into everything: the homework culture, the sports culture, the way teachers talk to students, what counts as success. 11 differences. Some are logistics. Some go right to the bone of what two countries think a childhood should look like. Here's the question worth leaving you with. If you had to pick one of these differences that would actually change how your kid turns out, not just how their school day feels, but who they become, which one would it be? Drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to know what people are seeing.